네, 안녕하십니까. 저는 부천아트센터 공연장을 설계한 홍성규 건축사입니다. 부천아트센터의 개관을 축하드리면서 사실 이 공연장을 설계할 때 가장 주안점을 두었던 아름다운 음향의 설계자인 아랍사의 다테오 나카지마 씨를 모시고 부천아트센터에 대해서 이야기를 나눠보고자 합니다. 그래서 오늘 인터뷰에 응해주셔서 감사합니다. 오늘 인터뷰는 부천 시민 및 부천아트센터를 방문하신 모든 분께 소개될 예정입니다. 본인 소개를 먼저 간단히 좀 부탁드리겠습니다.
My name is Tateo. I am an Arab fellow. I worked with you as the lead acoustician and theater designer for the hall. I've worked on concert halls and opera houses around the world. I lead a team with whom we work together on these projects, and it's with great pleasure and pride that we're here today.
먼저 제가 알기로는 다테오 씨는 어렸을 때는 클래식 악기를 전공했다고 들었습니다. 근데 이제 건축음향으로 전공을 이제 바꾸셨는데 그런 어떤 특별한 계기나 아니면은 뭐 어떤 이유가 있으셨는지 그게 좀 궁금한데요.
I started in music because my mother is a linguist and she wanted me to have a third language. So she had English, Japanese, but no third language, so she started me in music. I started violin when I was very young, 2 years and 9 months old, and I thought I would play violinist forever. But when I was 17, I went and studied in Europe, and I discovered conducting, and I started to become a conductor. And I was a full-time professional conductor until I was about 30. When I met a man called Russell Johnson.
Yeah, so famous guy. Yeah.
And Russell Johnson was the head of a group called Artec, who was a famous concert hall and opera house designer, worked around the world. I was fascinated by how the music I was making worked in symbiosis with space. So we produce sound, we communicate, but everything we hear is in relation to the environment we're in.
Right.
It took a while, but it was a slow conversation that became very interesting because he said to me, when you listen to music in a room, you have to understand what is the artist, what is the composer, and what is the room. And so he wanted to have me come join the practice because I could provide insight into what is the music and what is the artist and learn what is the room. And that started a journey for me, in which I moved from Europe, went to New York, joined the practice finally, and started to work with him in Lucerne, in Singapore, in Philadelphia, in different places around the world, started to design and started to bring my experience as a musician, as an arts manager, into building. So it's not that I changed my major, I was already working then, but it was an opportunity to explore another facet of music making.
I totally agree. Beautiful sound is also not only making by instrument of your hand, also instrument of the body, of the body also. 부천아트센터 건립 시에 음향을 저희가 특별히 주안점을 주었는데요. 이 부천아트센터의 건축음향 특징에 대해서 좀 설명해 주실 수 있을까요?
Well, as you remember when we were designing this, of course the client, the city expressed an intent, a desire to have a certain size. Of course, there was the Bucheon Philharmonic, which is already well known. There were a Sony recording artist. This was very important in our discussions. But like all of the projects, I think we looked for something that would resonate with these people here and this place. And so thinking about it from a point of view of Korea, thinking about it from a point of view of what does the history of Bucheon have, we came up with the proposals we did, I think. And if you remember, the Bucheon Philharmonic has a strong musical tradition that comes more from a Germanic tradition.
Right.
And that sense of order is something that permeates the strength of that orchestra, and you could hear it in the rehearsals today. Right. So we wanted to create a room and a space that gave a sense of an environment that allowed the musicians something solid to work with, a place that has a sense of order. There's a lot of passion, a lot of focus on quality, which we don't always see from our clients, and that was inspiring. So I think all these things come together to our trying to create something that had a unique sound for Bucheon, something for this orchestra that tailored for them, and hopefully it will resonate with the people of Bucheon and become something where they feel that they belong.
Can I understand your word like this hall is more responsive than other hall maybe. That response is kind of more have some kind of shaping of order, and it's like there's some breaking down some rhythm and then more clarity. You mean the clarity issue or?
Look, I think clarity is important. We live in a very more intellectual age, and I think people have to be able to understand what's going on. In this hall, one of the things that we did talk about from the beginning is we wanted to create an environment where musicians could actually be agile as well, emotionally agile.
Right.
And we talked about how actually I'm fascinated by the fact that the Korean language is a non-aggressive language. Sound goes up, it's soft at the end. But actually, when people change their mood, it can happen very abruptly. And that means for me that actually the sense of order and in a way the fact that you can really rely on it means that if you want to do something that suddenly changes mood, you can. I think sometimes when you have a big sound, you lose the ability to actually be precise or to move. And of course, the approach that we've taken here using coupled volumes, so the reflectors we see allow sound to come at different time, early and late. That means that we can get big sound, emotional sound, but also clarity mixed in that allows for agility, for subtlety, and all that.
부천시향, 시립합창단, 그 다음에 각종 테크니컬 스태프과 함께 음향조정이라는 것을 실행했었는데요. 과연 이 작업이 어떤 작업이고 이게 왜 중요한지를 좀 여쭤보겠습니다.
Every instrument is different.
Right.
We saw earlier in the week that there was quite a lot of energy being given to choosing a piano. It might look like every piano is the same and you press a key and it makes sound, and that's true to a certain extent. But the nature of the wood, the exact tension, character, every piano sounds different.
Right.
So what does this mean? To use a different analogy, I think everybody knows what it's like to go to a hotel room. And it's fine. You know where the bathroom is, you know where the bed is, there's a desk, we find power plugs, you're comfortable. But it's not home. For it to become home, you move around the furniture a bit. You put up your own artwork, you play with the lighting, and you get used to it. So really the work that we've been doing with the artistic and technical staff of the center and the orchestra this week is starting the process of making it a home. Now this is a home that has things that can move. So we have to, it's a little bit like having a dimmer of the light. You have to find the right setting that you're comfortable with. Maybe you move the lamp. This is basically what we've been doing. I think our relationship with the spaces we call home never stops, does it?
Right.
Our job is to set it onto the right path, right? We design the space. We know more about it than they do for the moment. We set it so that we think this is the right layout, the right place, and then let them live with it.
I see.
And then we come back and hear, oh, could it be this? Could it be that? I couldn't hear this or I couldn't find that. And we adjust things. And little by little, it becomes their home and their work. And once in a while, we might get a call and saying, we're doing this thing that we've never done before. How should we do it? And then we'll help.
I see.
But it's a process of it becoming theirs. And during this initial process, of course, because we still know the hall better, we are guiding them. But little by little, it becomes their tool.
I see. 일반적인 이제 건축음향이라는 것에 대한 전반에 대해서 한번 좀 여쭤보려고 합니다. 최근에 건축음향의 트렌드라고 할까요? 이런 것이 어떤 경향이 있는지.
I think we live in a time where it's very exciting. So if I look back in the history of concert hall design, there was a time when really we found spaces that sounded good and we copied them.
Yes, I remember that. I did the same thing.
And actually, I'd say that this is before there was any scientific knowledge about it. Basically, and it's the same way cathedrals got built, right? Somebody built a cathedral, it was nice. You take the idea, maybe steal the person who designed it, go to the next city, you build it, but you build it a little taller, a little wider with the side chambers or whatever, and you make it a little bit better. And that allows for the creative process of copying that actually becomes evolving into something else, etc. That creates design evolution. And I think concert halls and opera houses have this huge, long history from throne rooms to one that actually gets to a certain point.
Right.
Then there is a very magical moment at the beginning of the 20th century when more scientific analysis, Walter Sabine, started to actually say, actually, there are phenomena here that we can measure and replicate.
Right.
And that process hasn't stopped. It's gotten more and more sophisticated, but it hasn't stopped. At some point of understanding phenomena, we could replicate them reliably. And I think that's where I call engineering starts, where you say, actually, if you do this and you calculate these things, then you get this outcome, right? And that becomes the point of engineering. It's about reliability. It's about decision making so that you more or less get that outcome you're looking for. And it becomes stable as an industry. What you lose is magic. Now, I say it's an exciting time in architectural acoustics because we are, I think, finally at the point where we can say we want to design. And by design, I mean have an intent of an outcome and have enough knowledge, technology, skill to be able to deliver that intent. And for me, and then maybe this is because of my background, this is all about what do we want to hear? How do we want to see? What is our relationship, artist to audience? Right. What do we want to feel? Right. And so our process starts with that question. Who is it for? What's the cultural question? A hall in Bucheon should not sound the same as a hall in Paris or a hall in New York, or for that matter, a hall in Seoul, if you ask me. That actually, for it to be meaningful, it should be of the place. And that's really about sustainable development. So our ability to actually deliver not only reliable, safe, but really individual experiences that we intend to deliver, that's where we are in the industry.
I think that is kind of to cover my second question. My second question was, what do you think is the most important thing in acoustic design? But probably that is your answer.
Well, I think that is one part of the answer. Yeah. I think that the other part of the answer, which I think feels obvious, but we should not forget, is that if there is a curse, I think, of modern urban environments, it's that it's noisy. We all love to go into nature and go into the mountains, or because actually one thing is that it's less noisy. I think very much the fatigue we feel when we travel in an airplane has to do with it being noisy. And noisy is not just a sound thing, it's also a visual thing. So to be able to actually go into an environment that allows you to focus without disruption, that allows you to hear subtlety things because you're not being distracted by sound, by light. This is actually increasingly precious. So it's not a sensory deprivation thing where you're in a VR headset at home alone and you're basically alone with avatars, but actually you and I, we go to a place and we are given really the luxury of silence. And then you insert sound into that silence intentionally. So silence, I think increasingly, is extremely important.
I see. It's all interact each other, like not only just like the quietness of the sound at the same time. Some design the sound is kind of the plus of the kind of the silence of that. Some making the sound with some interacts with something and aiming the more higher is very, very individual or very, very some different from each other, some character. That is kind of, I think, some your intention of some kind of in coming days, like a design acoustic or something like that.
I think so.
Yeah.
And I think the opportunity is huge because we have seen working around the world that when we create something that people love, the investment is worth more, right? And we live in a time of climate emergency where we don't have resources. We have to be very careful about what we spend time on. But on the other hand, during COVID or after COVID, what people missed most was actually getting together and doing things together, with or without a mask. And I think these spaces, therefore, are actually quite precious. But if we create them as generic, we need a place to gather, then it's a lesser investment than if we create something that feels like it's owned by that community and feels like it's made for that community.
I see.
And becomes a place where that community comes together to become and continue to evolve, become something more.
So this is kind of the engineering-wise, this whole, or this the Bu천아트센터 is like the very quiet and very some kind of has a lot of potential to produce beautiful sound. But finally, our intention is some kind of all the citizens come to here and enjoy their life and then make some kind of another some brightness of life for that in some out there.
Well, I think these are the spaces, not just this one, art galleries,
Yeah.
museums, libraries. These are the spaces that makes Bucheon a city, a community, and not just a lot of people living in one place,
Right.
right? And it's this sharing, the stimulation, the challenge that the artist can bring into our lives that make us think, that make us evolve.
In terms of like the audience point of view, they may ask at first like this. So actually, and acoustically, where is the best seat for the class concert in this hall or
They're all
some
good
other hall? Yeah.
They're all good seats. They're all different seats.
Yeah.
And I think this is important. I would encourage everybody to try different seats. We all have different personalities and expectations, but there are some really excitingly different seats. You and I both sat behind the orchestra this week, for example, and you might think, well, that's leftover seats. Not at all. I think they're really exciting seats. You hear very well. You can see the musicians
very
working. You can see the conductor. That's quite exciting. It's non-traditional. I think that some places will feel more like you're immersed in the energy, and other places will let you sit back and dream a bit. But it's not about quality. It's really about how you want to experience it. Every seat is necessarily different from another seat because what you hear is a relationship between direct sound and reflected sound.
I see.
Right? And every seat has a different distance from the direct sound and the reflective surfaces. So it can't be the same. But they're all good seats. They just have slightly different personalities. And of course, we understand things, sound and sight together. So the way you experience it will be different. So once again, I think that audiences should be really encouraged to move around and try different places.
그러면 조금은 다르게 질문을 바꿔서 아마 이제 곧 있을 그 공연 중에는 스트링 쿼텟이라든지 아니면 굉장히 옛날 악기를 사용하는 그런 오케스트라가 공연을 준비 중인데요. 이런 공연에 대해서 이 부천 콘서트홀은 어떻게 반응을 할 수 있는지 그런 거에 대한 걸 한번 여쭤보겠습니다.
I think that we've seen that throughout the week. One of the things that this hall can do, because it also has the sophisticated ability to be adjusted.
With canopy and
The canopies, with the reflectors underneath them, and for some events they'll see curtains and cloths being deployed as well. That means that we have the ability to create really somewhat optimized environments for each thing, each type of performance. So audiences will also recognize that when they come in for one performance or another performances, actually the room might look a bit different.
Right.
And that is intentional to actually for that tailoring of the environment to that performance. So what does that mean? I think that it means that one shouldn't assume that if you come in for a string quartet, it will be less impactful. And especially with the Emerson String Quartet, which is such a fantastic ensemble, a group of musicians who have been playing together, it will have a different feel, a different impact. But I would look forward to audiences responding with as much energy, I think. And then, of course, Philip Herwege and his way of making music, reflecting the past, will have a different sound. And this hall will provide audiences with the ability to really engage with that. And if they've never heard that way of music making, maybe they come out and say, well, that was something else, because it has a different color and a different light, it comes from a trueness to perhaps how music was originally written.
I see.
And there is no right and wrong in all of this. But there are things that each one of us resonates more with and less with. And again, this hall and the programming that is being offered is so broad that it's an opportunity to really discover or rediscover different things.
아마 부천 아트센터 이렇게 오픈하고 나서 많은 분들이 오실 텐데 그 중에서는 클래식 음악을 좀 익숙하지 않으셨던 분, 심지어는 뭐 처음 이제 클래식 공연을 보러 오시는 분도 계실 것 같습니다. 근데 이러한 클래식 공연을 좀 감상할 때 뭐 어떤 즐겁게 감상할 수 있는 팁이라고 할까요? 이런 것이 있는지 한번 여쭤보겠습니다.
Look, I think really everybody actually listens to classical music. They just might not realize it. You go to movies, you're listening to classical
Right,
music,
right.
right? The music that is being written by Hans Zimmer or John Powell,
Yeah,
this is classical music.
Right.
I think everybody should come and understand that when we say it's classical music, it shouldn't come with this assumption of it being difficult
Right.
or that it is something that you have to be educated to understand. As I said, it's about emotion and it's about being taken on a journey. And
Right.
that's not an educational question. There are some people who have studied it and will analyze it and actually be able to talk about it in a different way. But the reason to come is not primarily that. So I would encourage everybody to come. I think that then, I think the other thing is that if I've done my job, if we've done our job correctly, compared to the experience in a film,
I
think
see.
this is so much more immersive, so much more intense.
Yeah.
It's dramatic. It has magic.
Right.
You can't breathe at the end of performances because you're like, that sort of magic that actually you are experiencing with your friends, your colleagues. I think this is something that means that it is more than it would be in other contexts.
Right.
So again, possibly the most important thing is to get advice if you've never been as to what to come to hear. But again, I think what we consider classical music, I think most people are already comfortable with it.
Right.
They just don't know
I remember, that the Star Wars is classical music.
I'd say in many ways the way I thought orchestras sound was Star Wars.
Recently, even the Top Gun, some of them, they use the.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
I also am a great fan of the soundtrack for How to Train Your Dragon. Great soundtrack, and actually, if you compare that, for example, with Ravel's Daphne and Chloe that we were rehearsing today, or Tchaikovsky, I don't really think that there is any reason why somebody who enjoys that soundtrack would not enjoy this
So
one.
it's like the better to like that even the forget about something that this is classical music. It's just music.
It's just music. And in this generation, people are used to a wider range of music. So
Right.
the attitude that this is something that my grandparents listened to is the problem, not the music, which I think everybody can enjoy. And in a place like this, which will be immersive, impactful, dramatic, and you can see things happening, I think that that's quite important. I think, in that sense, though, that people who are here for the first time might actually enjoy sitting behind the orchestra, where there's a lot to watch.
Right. 마지막으로 그 음향 설계자로서의 개관을 맡는 소감을 한번 들어보기로 하겠습니다.
Every project we do is a journey, isn't it? It's it starts with curiosity. It goes through moments where we fight for things that we think are important. For us, the moment when we first hear sound in a room, of course, is critical. And so this week has been absolutely fantastic in that sense. We're looking forward to doing more of that as we go towards the opening. I was reflecting with a colleague over lunch that we're very fortunate to work in a part of the industry where we get to see the buildings into which we are pouring such love and dedication become owned by other people and watch how they're impacted by it. So really looking forward to the first concert and actually watching and being able to help and facilitate, but really being part of that community experience that the concerts are. So looking forward to it. Very excited.
오케이. 네, 지금까지 다테오 나카지마 씨와 인터뷰였습니다. 개관 공연을 무척 기다리고 있고 저 역시도 설계한 사람으로서 이렇게 훌륭한 홀을 부천 시민들과 함께해서 무척 기쁩니다. 더욱더 활기차고 그 다음에 더욱더 창조적인 문화도시에 부천에 기여할 수 있고 시민들이 항상 즐길 수 있는 그런 홀로 거듭나기를 기원합니다. 감사합니다.